We got Miami at Florida. We've been talking about this game all offseason. Massive implications here. Right now on Bet Online, Florida's getting the full 3. So +3, +125 on the money line, over, under, and even 54.
Picked Miami to win the ACC for the first time ever. Picked Mario to figure it out for the first time in a while. I don't think they win this game, though. There's something like all the arrows are pointing to Miami winning this game. High-flying offensive additions. Cam Ward got a lot of witch in him. Damian Martinez, hell of a running back coming over from Oregon State. Offensive line that Mario's built, you know's good. You got Restrepo. You got the Big George kid on the outside as well. Miami's got enough weapons to be really good. Defensively, you expect them to be good. But all Florida's heard all offseason is how big of a joke Billy Napier is. Oh, he's group of 5 Billy. Florida, he's going to be fired after this year. Florida's the over-under's 4.5 wins. This team's really not very good. Graham Mertz is just white bread, whatever. I'm telling you right now, I think Florida's coming into this game more motivated than a lot of teams are for week 1. And they're not a bad football team. That's the biggest common misconception I see is that they think Florida is Mississippi State this year. Or Arkansas this year. That's not true. That Florida defensive line, that front 7, is a problem. Graham Mertz is a good player. When you look at Miami, and I know what they're going to do. I know what Gidgey's going to do, and it's smart. He's going to say, you know what? Graham Mertz is so good against pressure, identifying where it is and getting the ball out. It's almost like the opposite of DJU. The more you make Graham Mertz think, the better off I think you are. Because if you make a quick and easy decision for him, he'll throw the check. He'll check you down all the way down the field. He'll throw the hitch all the way down the field. You start bringing pressure against him, he will find ways, whether it's Eugene Wilson, whoever, to make you pay. Don't forget about Elijah Badger, who's a hell of a player as well. I think Miami's going to try and get there with 4. They're going to say, you know what? We're going to rush 4. We're a little young in the back end. I want to protect these guys. We'll stay too high. I'll make you prove it going all the way down the field. We think you can run the ball. I just think when I look at this matchup, and I look at how people view Florida and how people view Miami and how people view Billy and how people view Mario, I like Florida early on. Right now, I like them. You know, you can get 3. God, get 3. You bite up to 3.5. Don't think you'd be crazy at all for a little late.
Over or under right now for you?
What's it at?
54.
I would lean over right now.
Yeah, I think
I would lean the over if I had to pick one. But this, I'm telling you, this matchup isn't a David versus Goliath. They're going down to the swamp. And Florida has done nothing but hear how Billy's going to be fired and how great Miami is. Just don't be shocked all of a sudden if you look up at halftime and you're like, Florida's up 6? Like, how is Florida up 6? Because Cam Ward will hold the ball, boys. He will hold the ball a little bit long, and he's not a great runner. I'm just worried about Restrepo on some of the young DBs if Florida goes man on 3rd down, even if it's 2-man in that slot. You can shade them. You can double 2 and 2-man, even though you're responsible for a half at safety. I just worry that Cam Ward and Restrepo are going to have that chemistry that's going to extend drives when Florida's put in the work to get it 3rd and 8. That's what
taking Florida 2 in this one?
No, I'm not. I think
you're going to switch it up.
I think it's going to be a close game.
Okay.
I'm just interested in pressure. Right, that's what I'm interested in. How does Cam Ward deal with the pressure? Because at the end of the day, regardless,
like you mean the pressure of blitzing or the pressure?
No, the
of
pressure
the
of being. First of all, the pressure of going to play in the swamp, right? Which is not. I don't care if Florida wins 3 games. That place sucks to go play at, one of the toughest environments in college football, and to be the pressure of Miami's back. All right, they're back. Picked to win the ACC. Got all this talent. You bring in Damian Martinez. You got the receivers. You're pretty good up front on the offensive line. All the pressure of y'all coming in, just doing the job. Can you get it done? Cam Ward, competitor, phenomenal athlete. You've seen what he does in Washington State. He has talent around him. But can he handle the pressure? That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, look, watching Graham Mertz play last year was a real treat. I love when guys come in, they have no expectations, and they're getting underrated, and then they go out and perform the way they did. And like you said, going on the road and playing in the swamp, like I don't care if you go win by 1 point, no matter what the expectations are for the Florida Gators this year, you take that victory and you get out of there with a smile on your face. Because I think people have convoluted the fact that, Florida's schedule's really tough with oh, they're a really bad football team. They see that projected win total at 4.5 and they think, oh, well, this is an easy victory. That's not going to be the case. At the same time, I'm going to take the Miami Hurricanes in this game for similar reasons that we were talking about Notre Dame. At some point, it's time. You've never won the ACC. This was a program I watched growing up, was one of the best in college football. When you start talking about watching Ed Reed running around the field and you're talking about Willis McGahee running these touchdowns with a colored visor on, like that was my childhood watching Miami play football. They were the best in the business. It's time to get back to that, and there's no more excuses of not having the roster to do it, because now you're going to bring one of the best rosters into a game in college football. You need to go on the road in hostile environments and win games.
Yeah, and the next guy we're about to bring on, Jake Butt from Michigan. He's been in a more hostile environments, than just about anybody. One last point I do want to make on that over. I do feel like Florida wins this game. You said it's at 54. It just, God, and I tell you, it just feels like a 30-27. Just a 30-27 Florida, 42-yard field goal from the left hash to win it. I just feel like there's going to be a turnover late in this game. It kind of reminds me of Florida-Utah from 2 years ago. You remember when Utah went to Florida and Cam Rising and them are driving late? He threw that late pick over the middle as they were going in.
I do remember,
their stud linebacker. A lot of people had Utah on that one. I'm telling you, man, just going down the swamp, that's a different flavor ice cream. But I'm going to go with Florida right now. We'll see on the number once we get to it. But I want to bring this next guy. First time we've had him on the show. I know we got a lot of Michigan guys in here, and that's fine.
Y'all just keep growing.
That's
They're
fine.
everywhere.
They're everywhere. Jake Butt, former Michigan standout. Jake, what is up, man? You can catch him on Big Ten Network, a little bit of everywhere nowadays. I know I'm going to see you at the Jake convention later on in the year, but, man, we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I know. We've been trying to set this up for a while, so I'm excited to join you guys. And I got to say, that setup is killer, man. I'd love to get out there in person sometime. Looks like you guys got a great set.
Come on.
It's like we say, man, just as long as we leave those Broadway girls alone, we're in good shape out here in Nashville. But, yeah, we got the Bet Online-a-tron behind us. I do want to ask you, Jake, real quick. Want to get into Penn State, West Virginia, some of this other stuff. Just real off the huff, your thoughts, Miami, Florida, week one. I mean, this matchup, man, people talk about Billy Napier's overall record. Look at Mario Cristobal's, and if Miami loses this one, you talk about a narrative flipping really, really fast. This one will it's going to be on that Simone Biles track.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, just an interesting game. Both teams have a lot riding on it. Florida, you look at that schedule, really just no room for error. When you have a winnable game, you got to take advantage of it. And then the same thing for Miami. Just so many frustrating moments last year. This is where these early season games are interesting too. I think about like Nebraska and Colorado, how much stakes you have on the season as a whole, and how an early season win or loss, we could look back at a defining moment. So certainly that battle down there in Florida is going to be fun to watch.
Without a doubt, and it's funny circumstantially when you look at it. Like if you're Notre Dame, obviously a loss early, it's crippling because you don't have a conference you can go into and win. You know, like if you're Miami and you lose to Florida, that sucks. You're going to be pissed off, but that's a whole lot better loss than Florida State just had over in Ireland against Georgia Tech, because now it's a conference team. So it's circumstantially, man. With the expanded playoff, it's really kind of changed the game depending on where you're at and what conference you're in. But Jake, I do want to shift gears. Another fantastic matchup on what's going to be an incredible weekend of college football. And it's a game that kind of reminds me a little bit of Florida State and Georgia Tech. And that is West Virginia hosting Penn State. You look at Penn State, going to be good up front. You're replacing a decent amount on that offensive line. I think there's some question marks in pass protection. A lot of people really aren't bringing up when it comes to Penn State when they lost what they lost. And then Drew Aller doesn't have as big as a sample size as DJU. I know you got a new offensive coordinator. They bring in slot Nicky. You're going to get motions. It's going to be a more fun offense. But Drew Aller's got to prove it going into Morgantown, does he not?
Oh, 100%. But I also, we can talk about the context too. He didn't have anyone to throw the ball to last year either. Like he didn't have a clear go-getter at wide receiver one. And what I'll give him credit for is that guy made very few mistakes, never gave the ball to the other team. So the context of that shows a guy that knew maybe when to push the issue and when not. And I think you look at the team as a whole last year, Drew Aller said, man, our defense is so good. The only thing I could do is lose some games. But then you go to the Penn State, or then you go to the Michigan game, then you go to the Ohio State game, and you say, man, this is when you need to, be at your best. going into West Virginia is going to be one of those games. It looked great last year when you hosted them, but now you're going into West Virginia and you got something to prove. So I'm excited to see what he does this year. But O-line's been an issue for Penn State for a while now.
Yeah.
Like that has been the limiting offensive factor for a few years. Last year was their best offensive line, and yet we still sat here and said, where's the run game? Where's the explosiveness in the run game? Where's the consistent dominance? So this is going to be a fun matchup. West Virginia going down there is always tough. They're coming off a strong end to their season and really looking forward to kind of playing spoiler. For some reason, it seems like it's a consensus pick. I understand Ohio State and Oregon as 1 and 2 in the conference. I totally get it. But it seems as the consensus pick is that Penn State was voted at Big Ten Media Days ahead of Michigan right now. And I look at it with 2 new coordinators. I look at some of the pieces they're having to replace. I'm not so sure. And I'm excited again in this matchup to learn a lot about Penn State.
Yeah, well, the interior of that Penn State offensive line's kind of struggled in the run game. You bring it up. I mean, you got Singleton, you got Allen, you got all the weapons you could possibly want there. But then you look at West Virginia, kind of like Georgia Tech a little bit on the offensive line. People aren't talking about this offensive line that they have. They lost, I think, 1 starter from last year, but the backup played a decent amount. I think this West Virginia team with Garrett Green, bringing back Donaldson, with the way Jaheim White came onto the scene at the end of the season last year. I know they're not elite at wide receiver, but I tell you, I think we're going to get a similar kind of game plan, a lot of motions. I think you're going to see it on both sides. And Garrett Green's running ability, I wouldn't be shocked at all if West Virginia was able to actually move a little bit on the ground by keeping Penn State guessing on defense where it's going to hit.
Yeah, and they'll need to too, because it's going to be tough blocking Abdul Carter off the edge. Anytime you can run the ball, that's beneficial. I think I read that article where they had lost maybe 1 or 2 guys to the NFL. But of their 7 guys that got playing time last year, they returned 5 with at least starting experience. And I do think we should spend more time talking about offensive line play, because when you have an experienced offensive line, like you saw with Georgia Tech, everything else gets easier. You can settle your quarterback into the game. You can keep your defense fresh. The trench play really is such a deciding factor at all levels. You look at the national champions in most recent years, Michigan, dominant offensive line. Georgia, dominant offensive line. Washington won the Joe Moore Award last year. So even though they're maybe replacing some of that high-level star power from last year, they still have experience. They still have starting experience, and will need to kind of control that line of scrimmage. It's a helpless feeling, not just for your defense, but for your offense as well. If you're sitting there saying, man, when's our defense going to get off the field? If West Virginia wants to win this game, I think it's going to start up front with the trenches, to your point.
100%.
And right now, boys, plus 8.5 West Virginia.
Give it to me right now.
Plus
give it to me right now.
Started at 10.5. That's right. We were talking about it when it was at 10.5. Plus 260 on the money line. And over under right now 51.
I'm close on the money line. I got West Virginia at 10.5. I still love them at 8.5. And I don't think they forgot Penn State scored that last touchdown in garbage time last year. I don't think they forgot that.
Is this more you guys are high on West Virginia, or are you just uncertain about Penn State at this point?
Both.
I'm a little more bullish on Penn State than they are, but we like West Virginia, and this is one of those games that's always fun to see in the first week of the season.
It is. If this game was being played week 5, I would probably lean Penn State, even with the 8.5. But coming off the way last year ended for West Virginia with all the momentum they got. And again, my wife lost a 12-team parlay because Penn State decided to run that last one in instead of taking a knee. I don't think West Virginia's forgotten that. But there's something about the combination of wily quarterback that can run, Garrett Green, returning offensive line with 2 running backs, one that I feel really good about in pass protection. To be honest with you, Jake, I don't trust Drew Aller yet. Drew Aller's going to have to show me that I can trust, and not just that it was his fault. I don't think they had any chemistry built last year. They couldn't throw a slant against Michigan and complete it last year. I don't think West Virginia's great on defense. I'm not ever going to accuse them of being that. But I feel like Drew Aller, this could be one where it gets so nuts, he may throw one that flies over a safety, picks it off over the middle. Don't let West Virginia be in it halfway through the third quarter. That's all I'm saying.
I've got Penn State in the college football playoff. We'll see if that decision comes back to.
I got him too.
Oh, yeah, that is right. Jake, let's talk about our alma mater, the Michigan Wolverines. One of the most difficult teams in the country to predict right now because there's so many new faces at new positions. But the culture's not new, right? You elevate Sharon Moore to be the head coach, was taking over for Jim Harbaugh last year. You're going to have All-Americans running around at several positions. A new offensive line. They're going to start a new quarterback this year. That quarterback battle's still going on. What should the expectations be right now for Michigan fans?
The expectation, like the fork in the road, is 100% dependent on how the quarterback looks week one and certainly week two. Because I was at practice, and this is going to be one of, if not the best defenses in college football, one of, if not the best defensive lines in college football. We talk a lot about Mason Graham. Kenneth Grant is a freak amongst freaks. This dude looks like he was created in a science lab. He's quick. He's strong. Like, I just don't know how you're going to block these guys. Will Johnson's going to shut down one side of the field. It's that same scheme that they're familiar with. Defense is going to keep them in every game. I saw the offensive line, and this is what I've been told is we learned the names of Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinner, and we knew Olu Oluwatimi and Drake Nugent, but it took a little while to get there. And the narrative in Ann Arbor, and I just talked about the defensive line. The practices I saw, Michigan's offensive line was more than holding their own. They were dominating. The narrative that I heard, and the way I understand it, is they look at this group of offensive linemen who have played a ton of snaps, but maybe don't have that name power and that starting experience, as a group that's going to be remembered as the Trevor Keegan and the Zach Zinner group. They think they have a very formidable starting five with some nice rotational pieces. They love Colston Loveland, Marlon Klein, Max Bredesen. They love their running back room. And then if it is Orji, we saw what Georgia Tech did when you have a dangerous quarterback that can run the ball, and Orji's even more dangerous than that. All of a sudden, like this roster has a bunch of potential. And I just keep saying, what happens if against Fresno State, whoever it is playing quarterback, goes out there and has even a slightly above average game and they run the ball for 150 plus? The rest of the conference is going to be saying, Michigan is right back towards the top of the conference once again.
So what is the update right now on the quarterback battle? Do you have any information?
Sharon Moore didn't share anything with us. If I had to guess, I'd imagine it's Orji. It's a two-man race. Jack Tuttle's been injured.
Yeah.
It's Davis Warren and it's Alex Orji. Mm-hmm. If it's close, which is what they're telling us, I don't see how you don't go with Orji just because of the upside. If it's really close, Orji will play regardless because they'll have packages built for him running the ball. But I would be really, really shocked. I also understand the politics of this too. I mean, as you guys know, starting Davis Warren, I love him. I think he's a great quarterback too. I've seen this guy develop for a few years. But if you start him and the whole fan base wants to see Orji, you better be damn sure Davis Warren's going to go out there and perform. Otherwise, you're going to have to answer some questions. Sure. In a sense, the safe pick is to put out Alex Orji and give him, all the opportunity to earn that starting spot.
You want to know how I know Michigan offensive line is going to be good?
Because of what he said?
Well, because there's no way that the game is going to be harder than practice. There's just no defensive line that I think Michigan's going to go out there and be like, oh, God.
And the smallest,
not these guys.
The smallest
when I'm looking at Grant and the rest of the Avengers.
And the ends are good, too.
I'm trying to remember who it was I was watching yesterday. It was the NFL. I'm trying to remember who I was watching. And they were like, yeah, I think it may have been the Titans. They're like, yeah, this guy was like a 6th-round pick out of Michigan, this freak defensive end, Harrell. They're like, yeah, he's definitely going to make the team. I'm looking, I'm like, this guy was the 6th-round pick out of Michigan, and they're talking about how he was, one of the good guys on defense, but not one of the top ones. I was like, oh, and
now Jim Nagy's already doing that with Josiah Stewart. We got Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore. Jim Nagy's already saying, hey, watch for Josiah Stewart in this year's Senior Bowl.
And that's that's the crazy thing about it. All the talk about the Big Ten kind of landscape. I mean, Ohio State, $20 million to NIL, apparently the best roster ever. Oregon walking into the new conference. A lot of people think they're going to win it and maybe just walk through it. Penn State, a lot of people thinking 11-1. Not a lot of people are talking about the team that just won it 3 years in a row, and that's the Michigan Wolverines. Do you think Michigan is getting disrespected a little bit, Jay?
I don't think they feel disrespect. Like this is what is so interesting about these group of guys. Like, they really don't care about the outside noise. Like, I have pressed them time and time again, and they're just focused on proving themselves right. Like, it's such a mature roster. the culture is in such a good place. A continuation from Jim Harbaugh to Sharon Moore. There's so much continuity there. These guys are just confident in their own belief. They're not worried about proving someone else wrong. They just want to prove themselves right. But you bring up a great point, though. It's dangerous when you have nothing to lose. Like, it's great to play the game of football with the chip on your shoulder. And for Michigan, the challenge last year is they were the hunted. Now they're back being the hunter, coming off a national title season. Like, that does play to your advantage at some level.
There's some segments of college football where there are higher expectations. There are more people talking about what Colorado's going to do instead of what Michigan's going to do. Coming off a 15-0 year where you just ran the checkup and after one team won 4 games or whatever it was. I find that fascinating.
All right, we're going to go to the chat here, Jake. We're going to start it off with the Mishman. I believe that stands for Michigan. Says, is there a guy on this roster that you think is going to be a breakout star that not a lot of people are talking about?
Yeah, I really like Zeke Berry, kind of replacing that Mikey Sainristil spot. And it was such a critical point in this Baltimore Ravens defense, because what made Mikey special is he was great in coverage. We all remember the pass breakup versus Cade Stover. Great in man, great in zone. But he was one of the better secondary blitzers as well.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be a Swiss Army knife in this defense. You got to be willing to tackle. Sometimes you got to play in the box, and you got to play with very high IQ. And all the whispers are that they really are excited about Zeke Berry. And I'll throw one out on offense. I just think Khalil Mullings is going to be a great 1-2 punch with Donovan this year. A guy that started off as linebacker, converted to running back, very similar to Hassan Haskins. I think he's just going to be, a really nice piece. They're going to need both backs, as they're going to be heavy run to start this season.
Yeah. All right, Jake, last question before we let you go. Jake Butt, Big Ten Network. You can catch him basically everywhere. The guy's taken over. I don't understand. I'm a defensive guy. I was a defense guy for a long time. Why does every offense not run tight end hide or tight end delay at least once a game in the red zone? It always works. 100%, whether you fall down or whether you're just, selling it kind of lollygagging. I don't understand why y'all don't run it at least once every game.
I'm all for getting the tight end the ball, and I completely agree. Like, I think some coaches overcomplicate it, where it's like, oh, this is our gadget play. We can run it once per season.
Dude.
Like, the best offense is fine. Window dress it, shift into it, do it from different formations, put a different guy in. That play works every single time. I completely agree.
It's the cheesiest play in real life ever. But Jake, man, we really appreciate it. Again, tell everybody where they can find your stuff, and it's set to be a heck of a season, my friend.
Yeah, I'm just all over social media. You can search my name. Love interacting with people, respond to DMs, all that good stuff. So I appreciate you guys having me on, though. Excited for this football season.
Jake, you're the man, buddy. Really appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you back. What a great time to come on after Michigan wins the Natty. Go check him out. Dude was a hell of a player, too. Appreciate it. All right. We can keep rocking and rolling. Want to get to the phones in a second. Real quick chat, Mike.
All right, chat. Let's go to the Dutchman. He says, you can't trust Drew Aller, but you can trust the quarterback at West Virginia?
Yeah.
Question mark, laughing face emoji.
Yes. I would take Garrett Green over Drew Aller right now. What? So Drew Aller turn around and hand the ball off? It's funny. People look at his stats, but then they don't see the games, like where the stats were made. Like,
Let me ask you this.
He only had 2.
Right now, if you had to pick, Drew Aller or DJU?
DJU.
Just because the floor's so high?
Because the floor's so, and he can run it a little bit better than Drew.
I think that's fair.
Hey, YouTube, what's up? We are almost to 150,000 subs. We want to get there before kickoff this weekend. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate it.